Hey, welcome everybody to Everyday Asphalt. My name is Jim Warren with TechSop, and we're glad you guys are here today. The purpose of this program is to go a little bit deeper in the areas of materials, design, construction, and maintenance, and that's why we're here with Everyday Asphalt. We post all these programs on our YouTube website. We also post them on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. You can look and listen to them there. If you want to go to our YouTube site, go to YouTube, type in Texas Asphalt Pavement Association or TechSapa. You'll find us there. Please like, subscribe, and share, and so everybody can see it. And then you'll be notified when another one of these programs pops up, or when we put another program up on the website. So again, welcome. Today we're going to go a little bit deeper on the critical side of asphalt testing. We're diving deeper in asphalt testing fundamentals. And with us today is Richard Izzo. Richard?
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Jim.
So Richard, give everybody just a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, I started at TechStot in the mid-90s for the bituminous section, flexible pavements, hot mix asphalt.
Okay.
And I worked there about 15 years, and thereafter I moved over to soils and aggregates.
Okay, so you have more time in the asphalt side.
50-50, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I retired in 21, and then I came here at TechSapa for a year, and then I went back to TechStot for another couple of years.
Okay.
And then I retired in August, and now I'm back here consulting at TechSapa.
Awesome. Awesome. So you're working here at the HMAC. You're also helping us a little bit across the street. So what kind of things are you doing here with the HMAC? I know you were teaching what, level 2 or 1A?
Yeah,
1A?
so my primary role is working on program content development for our certification classes.
Oh, okay.
And that's all of them across the board.
Gotcha.
And primarily I do the mix design. That's the training and certification for mixture design.
So that was level 2 in here the other day?
Yes, sir, yep.
Okay, awesome, good deal. Awesome. All right, so when people ask you, what do you do for a living, what do you tell them?
You know, it's a good question. You know, when if you say, hey, I'm an accountant, or if I'm a manager, right, it's pretty easy. Oh, okay, we get it.
Exactly.
But you say I'm involved with testing highway construction materials, you get that, huh?
What?
And
Yeah.
But after 20 minutes,
They get it. They're like, please, let me out of here.
But they have a different understanding.
Absolutely.
And they love it, you know, and they're so in awe.
Good deal. So we're in a lab. We're at the HMAC lab, and actually they're working in the other labs today. So if you hear some pounding, they are making samples. But we're on the asphalt side over here, every time we're in a lab or even out in the field, we want to make sure we talk about safety and that. So what's important relative to safety when you're working in a lab environment?
Yeah, first and foremost, training. The technician needs to know not only how to run the test, but any hazards that may be associated with the test.
Okay.
Very basic, right? Your personal protection equipment.
Right.
Gloves, eye protective, maybe a respirator, very basic.
No flip-flops.
No flip-flops,
Right.
no t-shirt, no tank tops.
Right.
But just as important is the situational awareness. You need to be aware.
Sure.
You may have a trip hazard, and that's both, field and the lab. Right?
People
it's a roller.
working around an oven, someone's coming out of an oven, and they're
Exactly.
turning, and someone's walking, and all of a sudden, there could be something bad
Or
happen.
asphalt burns on.
Yeah.
Anything in the field, the roller, right?
Yeah.
Traffic control.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hazards involved.
Yeah. Even a tool, okay,
Yes.
that's been sitting in asphalt, okay, or sitting in an oven getting hot, it's on the counter, someone doesn't see it, they come and they grab it, and they
That's
start
right.
walking away, or they grab a pan of material that's maybe been dried, and now they're walking, and now the heat's starting to sink into their hands, and now there's like
Absolutely.
a oh crap moment.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we always want to be careful. Anything that's metal. I used to do some blacksmithing and some welding, and you would always assume every piece of metal is hot. Just as a matter of course, because you can't tell. It's sitting there, it's iron, it's black. You can't tell if it's 900 degrees or if it's 72 degrees, and by God, you touch it, it's 900.
Right.
You're going to know. So
And like with
we
asphalt
wanna be
work
careful.
in the lab, everything has to be hot.
Yes.
So
Yep. And we're
that's
always
why-
cleaning, we're always staying hot, we're moving stuff, we're reheating material a lot. So it's always just kind of That perceptive. It's just as important in your field. You're wearing your hard hat, you're wearing your boots, you're wearing your vests, and at night you're wearing the pants too, and just wearing the appropriate PPE for the environment that you're working in is just so critical. It shows you that you're a professional. It shows you that you're in it to win it, and we're making sure we're taking care of the people in it. So if someone's not doing something right, we need to say, hey, there's...
Well, at the end of the day, you want to go home to your family.
Exactly.
In one piece.
With all the pieces,
Yeah.
and all your fingerprints and everything else that's going on. So, good deal. So, we're just going to jump in here and kind of keep mind of the time, because I know we're probably going to run over, but that's okay. I want to talk about the details of test procedures and all that as we get in it, but I think the first thing is who's doing this testing, and tell me about. We're in the certification lab, right? Why do we need it? Why do we need to be certified to run these tests?
Well, we got laboratory testing, we have field testing.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to whether you're in the lab or the field, you need to know how to run the tests. And not only how, and run it correctly. So those details, that comes out in the certification program. We ensure that people are running the test correctly. That's the goal.
So what if I don't run it absolutely correctly?
Well, there's the impact on your test results.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that person A versus B are running the test correctly, because their results will be compared.
Okay.
And whether
So if you're certified and I'm not, and I could probably run almost any test in here and get through it, but I won't have all the details, I won't have all the nuances, and we'll talk about test procedures here in a second, but I'm not going to get the same number as you, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and temperature is an example.
Sure.
So our compaction procedure, their temperature is based on a PG binder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're certified, you have to know that.
Right.
You're tested on that. You're asked that question. But if you're not, do you know that? So you may be molding at 250, but I have to mold at 290.
And that difference in temperature is going to make a difference in how the material compacts, which is going to make a difference in the test results, which is going to either cause us a problem or create a big problem.
Acceptance,
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
Everything. Good deal. Good deal. So let's talk about what, and now we're going to let's talk about test procedures. I mean, right now this is December 24, right? And the new specs have started in September this year, and that took almost 2 years to get all those redone. Travis on the asphalt side and his at NTD and the asphalt group, they've been sending test procedures out a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot. And they're in the process of going through all their test procedures. And so we've been through a bunch of them, and then there's a bunch more. He's told me there's one more big batch coming in the spring. And then they'll be up to speed on all the test procedures. Just going back through, making sure everything has changed. But I was looking the other day, like a level 1A, all the different tests that they're supposed to be able to run.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even remember my password sometimes. I got to look it up. So, how would you understand all the nuances of tens and pages of specifications if you didn't have a standard to go through?
Exactly.
Comments?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, first off, that's when certification is key, because every 3 years.
Okay.
So as procedures change, if you were certified in 2020,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Now, or 2022,
Right.
2024, well, you're still certified,
But-
but you may not be aware you were not certified under new procedures.
But that's just something, I guess that's just a general question then is is that in my responsibility as a certified technician to stay up with that?
Exactly. So going back to who's certified or not, if you're certified, you're actively getting notices, emails from the center of changes.
Okay.
So that's one benefit of being certified.
Okay.
You're continually updated of these revisions.
Okay, so I'll get an email, we just sent some comments in on some, and when that one hits the street,
Exactly.
it's been updated as of, February or March or December or January, whatever, and now we need to be using this method.
Right. But ultimately, right, it's on the technician, the field inspector. They have to know.
Okay.
But
All
we
right.
provide the tools.
Gotcha. Good deal. So we got different kinds of procedures, we got different kinds of tests, test methods, test procedures, etc. We got TxDOT, right?
Yeah.
We got AASHTO, which is all the state associations, the American Association of State Highway Transportation officials. That's AASHTO. They've got their own spec book, which is that big monster thing. Pick that up so people can see it.
This is one out of one out of five.
One of many.
one of many. All materials, not only highway.
And then there's also ASTM, which used to be called American Society of Testing Materials, but it's an international organization, and they test everything from, you know, the material, from zippers to the materials to the steel to everything. And they've got a very extensive asphalt inventory in their roads 4.03, I think it is. I've been on some of those committees for decades, looking at those procedures. So it's a consensus-based group. So is AASHTO, where they send them out, hey, we want to make a change. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Does this make sense to do that? And then they will update it, just like TxDOT does with theirs.
Yeah,
okay?
It's a process.
And they come out, you know, and ASTM, and I'm sure AASHTO was in a continual process of always looking, trying to update, or maybe there's a new test that they've got to come up, and they've got to develop a procedure to make sure that we all running it the same way, which is a big deal, So, so what's in the standard test procedure?
Well, we have to know what equipment to use.
Okay.
That's important, and not only what the equipment, but its tolerances, its requirements.
Okay.
We need to know, and obviously the procedure. We need to know what materials we may need to sample.
Okay.
So we have the equipment, we have the materials, and then the procedure.
Okay. Okay. So what is this we've got here?
Well, this is one of your very fundamental, very simple tests that has a big impact on performance.
Okay.
And this is what's referred to as a flat and elongated test.
Okay.
And the critical is you have cubicle rock, which is what...
Trying to get a little, there we go.
Well, we have cubicle rock, which is what we want, crushed cubicle rock in our hot mix.
Okay.
And then sometimes we may have something that may be flat and elongated.
Okay.
And when you're looking for stone-on-stone contact, such as SMA,
right.
well, that'll break down.
It'll break right in half. Now we got 2 rocks instead of 1.
Versus the nice cubical rock where
that locks together.
You're going to have that, and it's not going to crush.
Gotcha.
Or fracture.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome.
Very fundamental.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point out, and then you have something a little more, what we were talking about. This is more about absorption. This is why it's key to run that procedure correctly, because you may run it one way and say, oh, I don't need this bag.
If I run it with the conventional, with the scale and the bath, that water gets into the pores, right? And then it changes, changes the value, and this, using the Instantech, this is the core lock procedure that runs it a little bit differently, and it's a different procedure, but it accommodates mixes that have a lot of porosity and mixes that don't, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is why you need to know the procedure. Your absorption will change.
There we go. There we go. So, one, we got to know a little bit about the materials, right?
Absolutely.
And then we got to know enough about, put that down there, enough about the materials to make sure we're using the right procedure, because like you said, in this case, there could be several ways to skin that cat, right?
Yeah.
To get that bulk specific gravity or GA.
Yes.
Okay. So that's an important aspect as well. So so when do we test?
Well, so first, it's kind of like baking a cake.
Right.
You need to know that the ingredients that you're putting into that recipe are quality.
Okay.
So we need first and foremost, what we're going to use to produce the mix has to meet the quality requirements.
Okay. So our individual aggregates, individual binders, okay, and those are sampled and tested.
Those are sampled and tested.
And the binders go to MTD.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and you spent a long time on the aggregate side, so you're very familiar with the aggregates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then once we get to the actual mixes itself, then that's a whole nother. Now we're talking about the
production.
Some of the tests that are run in this laboratory here.
Yep. You get into production, and then you get into placement. So you have 3 phases that you're testing.
Okay. So again, I go back. When do I test? Well, I mean, if you look at the specification, you look at 341, 344, 346, or whatever. It's going to tell you, okay, what test I need to run, what frequency during production, what frequency, maybe once a day, maybe every sublot, okay, maybe once per project, depending on who's doing the testing. The specifications also spell out what certification level I need to have, right?
Yes.
And then it also talks about even timeframes and reporting. I can't I'll get to it next week.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Yeah.
we need to get to it right now, et cetera. And then there's the whole reporting scheme as well. And then there's tolerances as to, is this acceptable and is it not acceptable? And then the big thing, what do I do if it's out?
Exactly.
Right? What if
Yeah.
I do it's out? And then just kind of the whole communication thing. So, good deal. So, we can put some links in here, hopefully, and get you some more information on that as well. So we talked about the test procedures themselves. We talked about the importance of certification, which is, for TxDOT, the HMAC Center is the contract manager or provider.
Yeah, we're the department approved program.
Of department approved program to do all that. And then and then we've also got this thing called proficiency test.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
a proficiency test?
Well, it's one thing to be certified,
Okay.
right? You can
That's
come to the
once every
center.
3 years.
It's every 3 years.
Yeah.
And
A lot of
like
stuff
you
can
mentioned
happen in
earlier,
3 years.
you got 10 to 12 tests at certification level. Are you running all these tests every day?
Probably not.
You're not.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we know that the certified technicians continually know how to run that test?
Okay.
We send a proficiency sample. I'm sorry, TxDOT sends a proficiency sample
Okay.
to ensure that they're still proficient in running
And
those
how
tests.
frequently is that?
And that's annual.
Annual. So of the main tests that are most critical, they'll
Yes.
get a box of in our case, they'll get a box of mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, here's my box of mix, go run your tests, and then submit your results. And then TxDOT does a statistical analysis probably, and looks at standard deviations.
Exactly.
And you can kind of figure out, am I in the 1 standard deviation class, or
Right.
I am in a am I in 3 standard deviations, which is probably not where you want to be. But it does give you a reference point.
Yes.
Okay.
It's very critical to run those tests by the timeline and deadlines and meet all the requirements, because if not, you will become inactive. So you could potentially not lose, just become inactive.
So then what's the process after that?
Well, thereafter, you may have to come back and get recertified.
Ooh.
Right.
Yeah, if you're doing this for a living, you want to stay up on your proficiencies for absolutely certain.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely
it's a federally mandated
certain.
requirement.
Yeah.
So, and it affects, like you mentioned, it'll impact those key properties for performance, payment,
Right.
acceptance.
Okay. That makes sense. So again, why are we doing all this stuff? I mean, there's just a whole lot of stuff going on. I gotta go get certified, I gotta spend time, I gotta travel, I gotta do this, I gotta have the right size scoop, I've gotta have the right piece of equipment, I gotta have all this stuff. But it comes down to specification compliance, right?
Yes. So
what does that mean to you?
sure, and so the umbrella is our TxDOT's quality assurance program, which is an FHWA approved program.
Right.
So, and that's what specifications, right? It starts there. So that's where the requirements stem from. Like you mentioned, frequency, sampling and testing requirements, the guide schedule, et cetera. And then you got compliance within the specification requirements.
Okay. And so that just says, hey, I did it, it met, or it didn't, but I have a procedure. And I think that's what FHWA looks at, is they want to know that you're taking care of business,
Yes.
that you're not just cowboying it,
Right.
you know, and just saying, hey, it passes, you
Yeah,
know.
looks
no,
good. Looks good.
It looks good. Looks good from here, you know, or do the needle test or that sort of stuff. And no, but there actually is. But I think in the big scheme of things, again, from FHW's, it's a conformance thing, but it's also they're giving a lot of money to Texas, and they want assurances that that money's being spent wisely, appropriately. And so Texas is putting a lot of money in their roads as well, more than anybody. And we want to make sure that the money's being spent wisely. We're getting what we're paying for.
Exactly.
If I'm if I've ordered an SMA,
Yes.
I'm getting an SMA that meets all the SMA requirements. If I'm ordering a Super Pave D, it's a Super Pave D. It meets all the Super Pave D requirements, and I can trust that value, and I know that I'm going to get that. And I think from your former job at MTD is kind of looking at, we go build this stuff, and then we got to go let it perform.
Quality.
And if it doesn't perform, then we got to go back and figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did we build the quality in to begin with, or did we not? And so that's the purpose of doing the testing, and then contractor's going to be able to make adjustments as he builds, because his material's going to vary a little bit coming in, and he adjusts a little bit to make sure that the end result still meets the quality that he's looking for. I used the term the other day, Kentucky windage. If you're familiar, it's a shooting term where you have a fixed sight, but the wind's blowing, and you adjust the sight to make sure that you're still hitting the target. And that's what we have to do sometimes with our materials, because the quarries are dealing with they're making rock out of geologically sometimes diverse materials, as you know.
Not going to be consistent and not be uniform.
And it's going to vary a little bit.
Yeah.
And so if I'm trying to make this out of this stuff that's doing this, the only way to do that is I'm going to have to vary these a little bit in order to make sure I can I hit the target with my SMA mix or whatever I'm making.
Which is why test procedures are important.
And so are specifications.
And
so
specifications.
They all work together from that perspective. So one, we want to meet the requirements, and we want to validate performance, right? That's kind of the whole purpose is if I build my mix and it's got 5% in place air voids versus 15% air voids, I'm going to get different performance. And so we don't want to leave a 15% air, unless it's a PFC, but we don't want to lose a dense graded mix with that many air voids in the field, because it's not going to perform. And the testing tells us subjectively, good samples and all that sort of, that we've got that's really what's in that material. And then we can make an adjustments. And, in some cases, may have to go take it out and put it back, because if it's so far off, it's not going to perform properly. Well, everybody has a bad day. I don't know if you ever have a bad day, but I have a bad day once in a while, and things don't go well, and you just got to address that in the scheme of things. Let's talk about the differences in these other words. We talk about a lot of terms sometimes. QC, QA, right?
Yep.
We also use the word acceptance.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what's the difference between QC, meaning quality control? Who does QC?
Yeah, take a step back.
Okay.
You have different specifications.
Right.
You have a method specification,
Right.
or a QC QA specification.
Okay.
So the method is pretty much driven by our guide schedule and TxDOT.
Do this, do this, do this.
Yes. And then we get to QC QA, where then you have quality assurance by TxDOT, quality control by
The contract.
contractor, and then you have the referee lab, materials and test division.
Okay. Do they use the same test procedure?
Yes. Yeah. In terms of
Does QC and QA use the same test procedure?
yes, such as asphalt content.
They've got
They
to.
come in gradation. Yes. they
If
have
we're going to
use-
compare,
Yes.
we've both got to be certified.
Yes.
We both got to be using equipment that's appropriate equipment, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we got to follow the procedures. If somebody's in, and if somebody shows up to your job site and they don't have the appropriate certification, they should not be doing any testing, because all they're going to do is muck things up. Even if they're an old guy like me, I know how to run that test. I ran that test 30 years ago, Well, I haven't run it recently, and I'm not certified, so I'm not qualified to actually work
Exactly.
on a DOT project. Maybe I'll get certified someday. Is there a difference between quality assurance and acceptance, or is it the same?
I would say it's the same.
Okay.
Because all that testing is for acceptance. It's
Okay.
assurance. I'm assuring quality, right?
Okay.
Quality assuring, and I'm using those to accept my
So
material.
then why does the contractor test?
Well, it's like a control chart.
Okay.
They need to know that they're maintaining. They got to test the ingredients like asphalt content,
Okay.
gradation, to
Okay.
ensure the final product
Okay.
meets that specification.
Gotcha. 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 And this has come up, and my office is across the parking lot here, but I've been here for a while now, and I know it's come up every once in a while when people don't do what they're supposed to do, and they don't follow the test procedure, either willingly or unwillingly or knowingly or unknowingly or deliberately or whatever. What happens then?
Yeah, allegations of misconduct, abuse, or neglect are very serious. You know, taking that gift card or changing that number can lead to not only losing a certification, but revocation, to where you can never work in the industry again.
Wow.
So just erasing that number or
Just to make
accepting
your life
that.
a little easier.
Yeah, you know, we've heard stories. I've heard one the other day actually. Someone offered someone $5
Wow.
to change a number.
If I can
And
get bought for $5, you're pretty cheap.
five, and the guy was like, "Oh, no way!" You know, it was not the point of I need more
Yeah,
money. It was
right.
a point of no way. This is my job. This
Yeah.
is my livelihood.
Yeah.
And you get revoked, you're done. You
Yeah.
need to go to Oklahoma or somewhere else. Well, I mean,
Sorry, Larry. But anyway, that's funny. That's funny. So we don't want to do that. And so they've got statements around here, you know, what you do matters.
Exactly.
This is a professional, you may not be wearing a suit, but it's a professional endeavor. You've gone through the effort to get certified, to run the test properly. We need to treat people with that. All these folks in here across the hallway here that are working on getting certified, that's a profession, and we need to treat it appropriately, and they need to be, you know, taken care of and all that. And we need to rely on them because they need to tell us, is the material good or is it not? And can we incorporate that into a structure? Do we want to incorporate, you know, something into a beam we're gonna be driving underneath all day, or your kids
Exactly.
are, or maybe on top of the bridge, something into the bridge that your wife or your kids are driving over into that may be a problem. And then all of
yeah.
a sudden there's a problem with the
Well,
bridge. And
You got acceptance, payment, performance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So what you do obviously matters.
Absolutely.
To have all three of those.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's kind of talk about just the general quality of the materials, and we've been talking about it already a little bit in this process. But you know, there's a lot of tests that we can run in the process. You know, we've got a density gauge, we've got a FLIR infrared camera that's used. These are 1B tools that are used out in the field. We've got all the 1A, the bulk specific gravity setup, the weighing setup. We've got the RICE gravity, or the maximum gravity setup, or the GR. I'm kind of old school. I'm on GMM and GMM and GMB. But and again, that can even cause confusion because when they still were all in the dense graded material, they used GAs and GRs and all that. And when they went to SuperPave, the test was exactly the same, but the terminology changed. And that messes with people up because I run into people all the time that are been here a long time, and they'll use the term GA for a bulk specific gravity.
Right, and if you're certified,
Yeah.
you know the test procedure that has a nomenclature.
For that particular one. And if it's one mix, it may be a GA. In another mix, it may be a GMB.
Depending, right.
But it's actually the same, it's terminology.
Same parameter, it's
It's
just
the same
worded
parameter.
differently.
Yeah, just worded differently. Good deal. So we're going to sample before, during, sometimes even after construction, okay, where we're taking cores. You got a core
Exactly.
there on the table over there. We're going to measure the in-place air voids and make sure it meets our standards, our specifications, so we get the right level of density, so we get the right level of performance. And in-place air void / density is pretty tied pretty well to performance.
If I may,
Yeah.
so we think of test procedures as just laboratory or running a test.
Right.
There's also test procedures on trimming a core. taking
Yeah.
a core.
Yep.
So it's
I can't
all
hit
inclusive.
it with an axe and trim it.
Right. You know, there's procedure. So it's
And
yeah.
so again, I think we're talking to the choir here a little bit, but it's so important that we're following everything to the T's. And many decades, a number of decades ago, when I was working in a lab and actually managing a lab, we were always focusing on making sure we're doing things correctly all the time, not part of the time, not 99% of the time, 100% of the time. And you got new people coming in, you got people coming out, you got people that come in that have been around a long time, and they go, well, you don't have to do that. You just jam that sucker in that way.
No.
And
That's
it's
good.
That one's good.
That one's
That one's
good.
good. I don't have to test that one,
Yeah.
And so you start shortcutting, and you develop a shortcut, and I develop a shortcut, and then all of a sudden, maybe we run our proficiencies, and now we're in that third standard deviation, maybe even pushing outside of that and going, well, I run it the same way every day. Well, maybe I'm running it wrong. Maybe I've drifted off. And so again, it's going back step by step. It's baking the cake. It's step, add this, do this, shake this, stir that, certain temperature. And if it doesn't work, well then we got a problem. But we want to make sure that we have complete confidence in the technicians that are doing the work. And there's some great folks out there all across the state, work for, consultants and contractors and DOT, that this is their deal, and they take a lot of pride in that, as they should, to make sure these test results are being done properly.
And from a department perspective, it's about risk. So that's where all this is important.
It's also risk of the contract.
That's true.
Yeah.
Risk all the way around.
All the way around. We want to minimize our risk by minimizing the sampling error, minimizing the testing error, and so what we're trying to do is measure the material variability that's in there. Is this a good rock or is it not?
Not because of the person running the test.
Shouldn't matter.
Right. That's
Shouldn't
why we
matter.
need these
It's blind.
certifications and
Right.
yes.
It's
No, I
blind.
meant yes.
Oh, I'm
right.
sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, that's the intent of the certification, and having such an elaborate program.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's a big program.
Very big.
It's huge.
Yeah, we have about 6,000 people are certified.
This year.
And that's all. I mean, that's all materials, not just
materials
asphalt.
and base and aggregate and
Asphalt.
a lot of different areas. But Texas has got a huge program.
Yes.
And it's been growing. And I don't know if eventually it'll kind of flatten out, but there's a lot of moving parts to this, and that's why it's even so much more important that we all do it the same way.
Yes.
Because and it should matter if you're in El Paso or Atlanta. If you're running, if you're measuring the properties of a cationic emulsified asphalt, the test procedure should be the same, right? And so that is really kind of the key thing in all this is we can trust those numbers in that process. Out in the field, again, we're in the lab today. It's nice. Out in the field, you may be running longitudinal joint density profiles with a gauge. You may be running, if you're running with a camera, you've got requirements to do that every sublot. If segregation pops up, there's a density profile you can run out in the field. We're measuring temperatures, we're measuring width, thickness, smoothness. We're measuring all these final measurement properties. They're going to tell us how that mix is going to perform. So everything we do in the lab, where it's it's probably 75 degrees
Controlled
in here,
environment.
yeah, out in the field,
Yeah.
is not a controlled environment. I was on a project right before Thanksgiving, and literally the wind was probably blowing 20 to 25 miles an hour right across the pavement. It was you had to kind of like make sure my hard hat's on good, because it would blow off. But that impacts what you're doing out there. It's sometimes in the field, it's not fun. It's not fun, but that doesn't matter. We still got to sample properly. We got to take representative samples. We got to follow the random numbers. And we didn't talk about random numbers, but that's a real kind of key aspect of this whole thing as well. So we're not sampling everything.
Right.
We're only sampling a tiny fraction of that material. You want to talk about?
Yeah, well, it comes down to acceptance. So FHWA requires any kind of acceptance to be based on a random sample. So that's the requirement for FHWA.
And a random sample means
random
what?
sample meaning, so if I'm taking a core,
Mm-hmm.
it's at a random location within that sublot.
Okay.
Length and width with offset.
So
if you're taking hot mix,
yeah.
sample from the truck or at
Right.
the plant,
Right.
that has to be a random location during production.
Right. So that's anywhere in that sublot theoretically could be tested
Yes.
by the random number. And so that keeps it from like, well, I'm always going to sample this load or this part of the mat out on the roadway because I know it's going to pass.
Right.
That's not the point.
Right.
I want to be able to move that random sample around, not move it around, but let the random sample fall where it may. Now, there's allocations for like if you're on the edge or something like that to make adjustments. But we follow that random sample to make sure it's in the right spot and then mark that. And then, you know, once the core is extracted, cored properly, cooled before it's cored, you know, extracted properly, not with a crowbar, and, you know, we're not damaging the sample. It may be trimmed in the field or it may be sent back to the lab. But then we also got to talk about, well, what's happening when it gets out of my hands?
Custody.
Custody.
Right, chain of custody.
Chain of custody is a real important thing for any sample, whether it's a liquid sample or cationic emulsion sample that's being sampled and shipped back, or a binder sample, or a hot mix sample, or an aggregate sample. If that sample is to be used for acceptance, there needs to be a chain of custody associated with that to make sure that it's that sample that gets back and that's the sample that gets tested, and it doesn't get damaged or destroyed or swapped in the process. So real key component. And we use typically the bags in the field with the sealed bags and all that kind of stuff, which is a great way of doing that in as well.
And that random process are all outlined in test procedures.
Yep, and taught in the certification.
Yes.
And you have to demonstrate that in the certification. I've seen them when they got to go and mark out the location. So it's not just like, hey, I'm driving down the road, I throw my hat out the window, and wherever it lands, that's where we're going to take a sample.
Take that rock and you throw the rock. There it is.
That's the spot. No, there's a process for that. We need to make sure that we're following that appropriately. We've talked about sampling variability. You know, and I was in here yesterday, and hopefully I'll maybe insert thing. They were batching, and it's something I've been wanting to do. This is here's a close-up of a scoop. Okay, you can see it's dirty, but it's pretty much all got the same level of stuff on it. And in the video, or in the other clip that I shot, hopefully it'll pop that up here, it had a whole bunch of stuff on the edges of it. And I was like, well, how much is that? And so I weighed it. And it was like 90 some grams.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Of a lot of material. That doesn't seem like a lot when you've got, what's an extraction, 2,500 grams?
Yeah.
Something about that.
around there.
Somewhere in that, when they were
2,000 to 2,500.
Yeah, somewhere in that range in there. But most of that stuff is fines and asphalt. A disproportionate amount of that material is fines and asphalt. So if I'm scooping my material out and I'm stripping out asphalt and fines, and then I run my test, well, now my test is actually off a little bit. There's less asphalt in there.
So you're running it correctly, and I'm running it correctly.
Yeah.
It's just our scoops.
Yeah,
So I
you're
had
keeping your scoop clean.
I'm keeping it hot and clean.
Hot and clean,
And yours
and
just
mine's got just all kinds of
Right.
gook on it. That could be the difference between the result right there. And then we may end up having to go to referee and all this
Exactly.
other kind of stuff. We're just a matter of keeping your scoop clean
and hot.
and hot.
Or,
Do
and then you're wearing your gloves.
And you're wearing your gloves, in the process. So, you know, to me, it's like a lot of things. It's like a lot of things in paving, whether you're trying to get right or trying to get density, trying to get a good looking mat. There's a lot of little nuanced stuff, a lot of little attention to detail. And I don't think it talks about in this test procedure to keep your tools
No, it's a
clean.
best practice.
It's a best practice. And so there's those above and beyond what's in
Oh,
the
absolutely.
procedure. And
Yes.
again, if you just read the procedure, you'll never know that. And I think that's one of the values of actually coming in and running it and working with people and going, hey man, look at your scoop. Your scoop's like, where do you get the mix? There's just all this little, well, I've been cleaning this scoop in 6 years, you know. But that
Sure.
can impact your
Yeah,
results,
it will
particularly
impact.
when I'm comparing, and we do a lot of comparisons with, you know, with the other agency. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. So, and again, what we're trying to measure is material variability. That is the goal. We don't want to measure sampling variability. We don't want to
Right.
measure our testing variability, even though there's some there. Then we'll never be perfect. You run a
Right.
mix perfect, you run a sample perfect, I run a sample perfect. If we get exactly the same number, then we should be suspect, because that rarely ever happens. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about data when we're doing data. And I've been in labs, and heck, I've done it a long time ago. We're looking for something to write a number down.
Yeah.
I write the number down, and then I leave and go, where'd that number go? And I can't find it. Or I've seen people write on the
Paper bag or
no,
something.
I've seen people write on
the
the
table.
you know,
Yeah.
what the number is, or write on a Post-it. Bad practice.
Yes.
Bad practice. You guys, or HMAC, has got on their website, we'll post that link for you, a link of forms, blank forms that you can download and print out, and you can, all the asphalt, I think all the asphalt tests are in there,
Yep.
where they've got a spot for every number, and you can put those documents in there. So if you see somebody writing on Post-its, just go borrow the Post-it when they're not looking and watch them get nervous. Done that before. No, but I mean, we want to make sure we're doing that. So it's really important. We're looking at a small sample like that big that could, literally tens of thousands of dollars of material is on the line for one sample. And so we want to make sure we're doing that properly. So.
Yeah, and the key there, one, is if your asphalt content is too high or your gradation is a little off, I can look at my test results and say, all right, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
But if I got 4 or 5 different sticky notes, I got to piece them together. Am I running my C-Rock bin too hot?
That's
Right,
just not professional.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just tells me when I see that, it's like, yeah, we got some work to do. And it's just like, hey, it's a profession, treat it as a profession. Get the clipboard, put all the forms on there. You can document stuff. Do your control charts. Please do your control charts. Look at your control charts for trends in your data. And if you do that properly, a lot of times you will be able to adjust your mix before you get out of spec, and you start a whole chain of just bad stuff happening. Right. And so use the data. We want to communicate. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to communicate test results, not raw data.
Right. It's
Okay.
like you mentioned earlier, the
Right.
specs have a turnaround time.
Right.
And not only that, they require department-approved templates,
Mhm.
site manager templates. So it's very explicit what's required in the specification.
So what happens if I give you my raw data, and you're hey, I'm done running my test. Here's your sample, and here's my raw data. I'm going to lunch.
I didn't get anything.
I didn't get anything. Okay. I mean, if someone wasn't being straight, they go, oh, well, I don't know if they're running. I'm just going to use his data, and I'll just copy the numbers over. How many bads is that? That's a whole bunch, right?
Right.
That's
Sure.
not going in the right direction. So we don't want to ever do that. If you see somebody doing that, you need to say, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to be party to that. I'm not going to do that. That's not appropriate. We got way too much money on the line. Too much risk for everybody now.
It's a lot easier to do it correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
It's always a lot easier.
So let's make sure we do that. But if I'm running the test and I get a 6.1 or whatever the number I'm looking, 6.1% asphalt content, I need to tell you.
Yes.
What I got a 6.1. I'm not going to say, hey, my tear weight was this, and my weights were this. Don't need to know that. That you keep in the background. You keep that on the form in case we ever need to go
Right.
back and look at something, and you go, Well, there's the problem right there. You transposed it. There obviously looks like you transposed a number. Okay. I still remember this was in the 80s. I had a technician come to me one time. She walked into my office. She goes, "We got negative air voids on the sample." And I was like, "Negative air voids?" I was like, "Okay, I got to go see this before it disappears." But she had inverted something,
numbers,
right?
yeah.
And so, it happens. People get busy. You're
Yeah.
hurrying and doing that kind of stuff. But there's a term called QCing your own data. Look at your data, make sure it looks right. You're not trying to do anything. Your data is your data, and your results are your results. But man, it's not hard to transpose a number. And so you kind of go, oh, so, you can mark it out, you can initial it. There's all kinds of things you can do, like a surveying, and they never erase, right? Surveyors never erase.
No.
I'm a big fan of that, just because if I see erasures on paper, okay,
Good point.
that's not
Yeah.
that's right. Or just write in pen, then it's hard to erase a pen.
Yeah.
So, but anyway. So resources. Let's talk a little bit about all the resources that HMAC has developed, and you've developed some really cool ones. So let's talk about what's out there. We'll try to put a link on the website for that. So
First, we offer training classes.
Yep.
And the training classes are great because not only do we work with the individual so they can be certified, but they get to learn why we do things. Because that's important. It's what you do matters during the test procedure.
Exactly.
You think, oh, that test, don't have to run it that way.
Okay.
But everything else I do. Well, that little nuance there will have a big impact. So that they get that from training. They get specification training as well.
Okay.
So they get some experience.
Okay.
And it's all, it's very all-inclusive.
Okay.
It's really good. Training, if you have someone that has very minimal to no experience and you want them to get some really good foundation training, this is the place.
Yeah, just don't send them in to get certified and see if they make it.
Exactly.
Then that just puts them in a real bad situation, because now they're like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. Do I do it this way or that way? I guess it doesn't matter. But if they understand the why,
exactly,
then they understand, okay, this is why we're doing it this way. This is why it's important.
And why it has to be done right.
Why I have to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. What about the other resources that you guys have got on your website?
Yes, the website's really good in the sense that you can go to one drop-down menu and you can get links to specifications, test procedures. Instead of having 10 bookmarks, they're all right there.
Nice.
Material producer list, every little thing that we need to know or inspectors need to know, it's right there.
Okay.
So again, you have one bookmark instead of referencing.
And it's clean to move around. It's a nice website. I'm not giving you guys any, but it's easy to get to.
Yes.
It's easy to find stuff on.
So in addition to that, we do have videos.
Right.
For someone, like I mentioned, you may have 10 tests for a certification. I don't run them every day, but I have to run this other one. Well, I just need a refresher.
Oh, 2-3
Look
minutes.
at a video, boom, it's right there.
Right.
And they're usually under 3 minutes or so.
Which is nice. That's
very fast. If I'm in my truck.
3 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. True.
What else?
And then we also have these quick facts, which are just pretty much a quick summary of the procedure.
Those are great.
So it tells you the why, the when, the how, and the basics.
And it's like a 2-page thing.
The goal is to have 2. Yes.
Yeah. And good. Those are great. And all the stuff's free. Okay. And then you got your forms. Those empty, the blank forms are in there. Is there anything else?
The worksheets, the forms.
You got links to the specs. You got just good stuff. You even got the training manuals in there.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they can see, what am I going to be looking at when I come here, so I can, do a little
read
homework,
ahead of time.
do a little read ahead, and go, okay, and that's we're going to cover these things, and this is what I'm going to be expected to be able to do. So cool. What else? What have we missed?
I think we're pretty thorough.
There are a lot of test procedures.
Yes, and not only that, a lot of materials.
And a lot of materials. Yep, a lot of materials.
Yeah, whether you're doing a dense graded or an SMA, completely different.
Yep. All right, so let's wrap up. I'm going to a couple questions. Okay. Based on your research and knowledge, what's one thing that would improve performance if we implemented it today?
Okay, so in the mid-2000s, I was part of the research project and implementation for the thermal imaging system
Okay.
for the paver.
Okay.
And that's great, right? That was instrumental. So I think the one thing what we probably need to look at more is like a temperature automated systems. I don't know whether there could be something for the paver or for the plant, something more of that nature. Because temperature is critical.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can take that concept, because we got the technology, can we implement it elsewhere is what we need to look at.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are things out there.
There's lots of stuff out there.
You know, and that's one aspect. Another aspect too is way back when we looked at intelligent compaction.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the benefit of that is mostly for the roller so they get coverage.
Correct.
To make sure if I need those 3 passes,
Yeah.
I'm putting those 3 passes down.
Yeah.
Just that visual of looking at that's all we need.
That's where I think kind of a whole sidebar conversation, because I was involved in it when it first got started, and they had the temperature monitoring, the tracking, but then they tried to stick the density thing on there.
Yeah, no.
And that's where they made an error, I think. We could have got the tracking in. I think we probably could have got that implemented nationwide at the time. But when they tried to put that other thing in there, they added a lot to the roller, and it's density changes with temperature changes over the course of the compaction operation. It's just not that good.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen it get any better.
No.
You know, they've got all the software that says all this stuff, but I just have never trusted it. But if we would just gone with the mapping, because I saw some mapping stuff that was just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And once the operators saw what they could see where they were at visually, instead of just, I don't know where I'm at, then I think that could be a big thing. That could be a big thing. All right. So last question is your king for the day. You get to change anything. What is it and why?
Well, at this time of the year, let's see. At this time of the year, if I could change anything, considering paving at these temperatures,
Mm-hmm.
every paver is set up with a thermal imaging system.
Okay. Okay.
Because this time of the year, those temperatures fluctuate, and that thermal segregation will lead to cracking and raveling.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good deal. Is there anything else? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, we could talk about this stuff all day.
We can go on and on.
I think that's good. So we'll call it there. That's all the time we've got for today. I want to thank you guys everybody for attending. Remember that these programs are posted on our YouTube site, and the audio versions of these programs are posted on Spotify and on the Apple Podcast program. And we will continue to run these. We're starting to work on the agenda for 25 and what we're going to be doing for that, and we've got a lot of ideas for 2025. So keep looking at us for the third Thursday of the month at 3 o'clock Central Time, and we'll see you next time on Everyday Asphalt. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
See y'all
My pleasure.
later. Take care.